Hi, my name is Dennis Siri. I am Executive Director and founder of the New York City Independent Film Festival, Independent in Spirit, International at Heart, and this is the New York City Independent Film Festival Meet the Filmmakers podcast. Join us while we meet this year's filmmakers. Thank you. Bye-bye. Welcome. Today we're here with Megan and Bernice, and I Called, I believe is the name of the film. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Hello, hi. Yes, I am Bernice Pike, and I am the writer of the short film I Called You. And I come from London, England. I originally trained as an actor about 13 years ago, and I've started writing in the last 4 years. And this is my first short film that I ever wrote. So I'm so thrilled that it's been accepted into the New York City Independent Film Festival. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to hopefully many more scripts that make their way into festivals. So yeah, this is my first venture into this world.
Great, thank you for coming. Megan?
Yeah, hi, I'm Megan. I'm the producer for I Called You, and I also have a smaller part in it as well. So I'm a writer, actor, and producer, and I run and co-founded Double Yellow Productions back in 2018, and that was with the aim of creating more female-led theatre and film work. And yeah, 6 years later, 3 plays later, I Called You was my third short film, my first narrative, but I've got another 3 in pre-production, or 2 in pre-production, 1 in post-production. So the short film passion has definitely taken off, and I met Bernice, the wonderful Bernice, back in drama school as well. So we trained together, but this is kind of our second collaboration, but our first short film collaboration together. So which has been an absolute joy.
Well, thank you and welcome, ladies. I guess I'll start with Bernice, since you seem to be the start point here. What made you decide to be a filmmaker? What made you decide I'm going to be a filmmaker? How did that happen?
Well, I don't think I had as clear a thought as that. I'll tell you what it is. I just love telling stories, and that's why. So I first trained as an actor. So that's why I became an actor as well. And that I love delving into a new world, a new character. I love telling a story, and I just had this urge to write, and then out of that came I Called You, and I kind of just held on to it and thought, I'm not letting go, and I'm just going to build the right team around me. And there's wonderful Jane, director, who unfortunately can't make this this chat, but so I built my team, and it just kind of, and Megan, and it took off from there. But I also come from a psychology background, so I've trained in the past studying like psychoanalysis and child psychotherapy and psychology, and so I think that feeds into it all as well. And that I love delving into interpersonal relationships and looking for the nuances between people. And I love when the stories that I love seeing in film and TV and theatre and things are ones where they've provoked something in me, or they've made me connect to something, or they've helped me process something either that I couldn't, or in a new way. And so I think that because I get so much fulfillment in experiencing stories that way, I think that I that would be my motivation for becoming a filmmaker, is that I hope to, that's what drives me to write stories, create films that will have that same impact on people. And yeah.
Okay, great. Awesome. Megan?
I actually got into filmmaking. I think my background when I first came out of drama school, I did a lot of comedy, and within that, I think we did a couple of like comedy sketches, if you like, sort of YouTube. I mean, this is back in the day as well, before like everyone had like film software on their phones. Like, this is a good 10-12 years ago. It's quite hard to like remember those times where it was like it wasn't as easy to kind of make short films. But in 2020, I wrote a script, like it was called Best Friends, and I thought it was a comedy sketch, and then I showed it to a couple of people, and they were like, no, this is a short film. And I made it. And I think before that, I would say I'd done a lot of theatre, but we literally shot Best Friends 3 days before the UK went into lockdown, which it's just like mad. But what was extraordinary with the journey of it, and I suppose was like an incredible introduction to filmmaking for me, was that we kind of released it in lockdown, and yet it was seen all around the US and the world. You could kind of attend film festivals kind of, via Zoom, which I don't know if that was a thing before lockdown, but but the film itself was in film festivals for 3 years. And I think that's kind of, it showed me, I was like, oh my goodness, I can tell comedy stories or stories, I can make a piece of work, it will last forever, but equally it has this like longevity to it, and it can be seen all across the world at any time. And I think that's what made me want to become a filmmaker, because I was just like, it's just such a different medium to theatre, and there are so many amazing qualities to theatre, but film, it kind of felt this reward. I was sat in my living room not able to leave my flat, and yet I was able to participate, like I think in a film festival in Atlanta was the first thing I did. I thought this is amazing, and what an opportunity. So I think sort of maybe lockdown is to thank for my desire to become a filmmaker. I don't know, but there are sometimes some benefits to lockdown that you think, I'm just so glad that happened. So yeah, that would be me.
Good, very cool. That's great. When you first said, Bernice, I'm going to be a filmmaker, did your family and friends go, what are you, psychotic? You need to be your own therapist, or did they say, yes, good work, let's support you? What was their reaction?
Yeah, I've been quite lucky. My parents have always supported me. They've always sort of said, I had no one in my family. I have no one in my family that's in this industry at all. So I've definitely had to forge my own way. There's been lots of stabs in the dark and mistakes and things, and just muddling along. But yeah, I'm very lucky. They just want me to do something that I'm passionate about and that fulfills me. So yeah. Very lucky. I mean, I didn't necessarily say to the first time I said to my parents, I kind of let them into, hey, this is going to be it, guys, was when I remember it very clearly. I was 10 years old, and my mum was sat on the toilet. I'm one of 6 kids, so mum gets no peace even if she's on the toilet. There's someone that needs to speak to her, and that was my chance where I could have mum on. She had a captive audience, and that was when I told her that I wanted to be an actor. That's when I let her into this. I'm going to be going into art.
Yep. And how about you, Megan?
I would say a very similar response to Bernice. I think I'm very fortunate. My parents have always said, do something that you would love to do, but equally they've been quite, I think quite, maybe serious is the wrong word, but they encouraged me to go off and do other stuff beforehand. And then their kind of motive was like, if you still want to go to drama school or act, you can, you'll know more that your own mind and what you want to do with your life. I think more than my family, it's more that you meet friends along the way who you might not have seen for a while, and they're like, have you been anything this year? And you're like, oh, it's only February. No. Or like, you've just finished a massive project that's taken over your life for 3 years, and it's like, I don't know, a month after something, and you're still coming to terms with it. I mean, it just takes over your mind, and then it'll be like, what's your next project? And it's like, oh, I haven't even thought of that yet, because I'm sort of recovering for the last 3 years. So I think sometimes it's a good question, but I think with it, it's like, within that question, it's like you learn to find your tribe, all the people that you share your passions and your like, it's like doctors marry doctors, police officers marry police officers. I've realized as I've got older, it's really important how to have non-acting filmmaker, theatre maker friends, because actually it's just lovely for someone to not want to talk about, I don't know, Macbeth 12 hours a day, but it's really good to have people like that. If you say to them, oh, I've done a film funding application, it's taken me 6 weeks and I didn't get it, they're like, I feel you, and you worked really hard on that, well done, as opposed to like, all right.
Really?
I don't know. So
Was actually one of my questions was, do you have a tribe where you are? You just answered that. Bernice, are you part of the same tribe or you have your own tribe?
Yeah, oh no, of course. Meg's and Jane, our director, would be right in there as my tribe. But I fully echo Meg's. It's so important to have your tribe. I have I also have another tribe who come from an acting studio, but within, everyone's creating their own work, and so a lot of those are filmmakers themselves. And I think it's so important to be around people that keep you on your toes a bit. I mean, they champion you when you deserve to be championed, and they've got each other's back and we'd help each other out. But also when you want those aspirational people, when you're like, oh God, what they're doing slightly making me feel a bit nervous, I need to put some fun, and I think and you're just all the time, not in a competitive way, but you're just aspiring to always just
like to
develop and grow and achieve.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess in some ways you also answered this, but I'm sure we'll close the conversation. What made you make this film?
I happened upon an article one day that was a story about Taylor Swift suing someone who had groped her on the red carpet. So hang on, I should just backtrack a bit. So I Called You is a psychological thriller. A young woman returns home alone after a night out. She finds signs of an intruder, and she has to convince the police to believe her. Should they believe her? Anyway, so I'm just rewinding. So I saw this article about Taylor Swift suing someone who'd groped her on the red carpet, and I had a really interesting reaction to the article, and I thought, oh, for God's, so my first reaction was like, oh, for God's sake, that you're suing someone for that, like, get over it. And I had this I was annoyed that in her privilege that's what she was able to do. And then, some time passed and whatever, and I must have, I reflected on it a bit more, and I thought, hang on a minute, the reason I'm angry is because part of just the experience of being a woman is that you frequently experience these micro, I'll call them just for namesake, like these micro versions of sexual harassment on the scale, things like groping, catcalling, flashing, those sorts of things that at that time, this was maybe, I can't remember exactly, it's probably like 5 or 6 years ago, but they weren't really getting much recognition. They were just laughed off, or they were brushed under the carpet. No one, and they weren't, because they weren't life-threatening things, and it was all part of what we just took on as being women. And so I realized that, no, I'm not actually angry at Taylor Swift for doing that, but I'm just angry that I've experienced so much of that, and I feel that I just have to put up with it. There's not a lot I can do. And so I think that, I know that is eventually what then planted the seed for me to write I Called You, where I wanted to put a bit of a microscope on this story embedded in that there's been some micro sexual harassment. We're not entirely sure what's going on, but at the moment it's nothing serious. And also that it's from the viewpoint of someone who's not a perfect victim, and how does that also affect your case or your chances of being of being listened to or whatever, if you've got some chinks in your armor, or if you don't perfectly stack up to being like someone that people want to get behind necessarily. So yes, that's what led me to write this film. And then I wrote it I wrote it in about August 2020, and there was lots of drafts then happening that I was working on. And then in about March of 2021, very tragically in the UK, there was this very this really awful tragic case where a young woman, Sarah Everard, was kidnapped and murdered by someone posing to be a policeman. And he had, a few days before that incident with Sarah Everard, he had flashed publicly, and that had been known by members, I think, of the police force. It was known that he'd, you know, because he'd flashed, and nothing was, you know, done about it. He wasn't as far as, you know, the story goes, I'm aware, he wasn't reprimanded at the time, you know, or having his license taken off him or anything, again, because those sorts of micro sexual aggressions weren't, didn't have the attention that they do now, I think. So then that the film was already in motion and we already had the team attached, and then I think we just so collectively were like, this film is even more timely and urgent, and we just want to get this film made, and it just gave us even more fire in our belly.
Okay. Do you have anything to add to that, Megan?
Oh, I think Bernice just sort of explained it so eloquently there. But I would say, as a filmmaker myself, I when I write, and I write plays and I've written short comedy, I love observing life or like social situations, and I normally would write with a bit of comedy value to it. And I think I remember sort of meeting up with Bernice in lockdown outside in the freezing cold outside a restaurant in like Kew, London, and she was telling me, and I was like, I really want to make this film because it's so different to anything that I've made before, and yet I can totally identify with all the points that Bernice is saying. And again, the Sarah Everard, when that happened, it was so it was just very close to home for me because I'd lived near to where she was, and we'd gone to the same university and all that kind of thing, and she had done everything right. So she had worn bright clothing, she'd walked down paths and roads which were well lit that I knew having lived there. She'd called her boyfriend on the way, or like left at 9 p.m. in the evening, all that kind of thing. But it was still
Wasn't good enough.
It wasn't good enough. And so I think Bernice just captured perfectly that essence, especially with the character Sammy that she portrays. You automatically, because you see that she's been drinking and on a night out, and all this kind of thing, you sort of almost you are led to be like, well, maybe she shouldn't have drunk, then she would know if there was an intruder. And you realize how, you know, there are so many different layers to this story, and I think we've come so far, and yet there's such a long way to go, because what we noticed was even the conception of the film to kind of now where it's at, sort of 4 years later, it's still more relevant than ever. Which, and you would think, oh, we don't want this film to kind of come out and lose its relevancy, and actually with all of it, every year or every month there seems to be sort of another similar case. And that's actually the very sad element to it. But that's why I wanted to make it, just because I think women can totally identify, you know, you're going out or you're walking back from, you know, a night out, you've got the keys in your pocket, you're calling someone, you're making sure there's no one behind you, you've planned your route home, you will take flat shoes with you instead of heels to walk back in so that you can run faster if you need to. And I think the absolute sort of privilege, my husband and I talk about it all the time, like, we live in the country and there's a cycle path near us. He can go for a run on a Monday evening at 7 p.m. in the dark on the cycle path, but I wouldn't do that by myself, because there's just a difference there. But anyway, Bernice just explained it so eloquently why this film needed to be made. And when I was like, I want to be a part of it, probably a little too enthusiastically, and she very graciously agreed for me to come on board, it kind of, it just felt like a brilliant challenge, both cinematically, script wise, and bringing on Jane as well meant that suddenly the team got a lot bigger. But that is such a amazing experience to have when you've maybe not worked on a film of that scale before as well. So no, it felt good from the beginning. I always think that's a good sign when you're talking to someone and it's good vibes, even though the script is not about good vibes. It's you know that it's meant to be.
Okay, that's great. You guys making this very easy for me. Thank you. All right. What was the hardest part and the most fun? You can kind of.
Oh, I'll do the hardest part. Bernice can probably do the most fun.
Okay.
But the hardest part was we had an original shooting schedule, and it was like 10 days before Christmas in 2021 maybe, and it was actually a really good lesson for me as producer, because I had asked everyone to do a COVID test before they arrived, but I didn't do that whole check with the clipboard thing before they came in. And we had a scaffolding that we filmed it in my ground floor flat in London, And because it's sort of filmed in the evening, we built a scaffolding kind of structure at the end of the flat into the garden so that you could hang a curtain around it so that it looks like evening at whatever time of the day that you're shooting. So we had a day for pre-prep. So, you know, at 7 a.m, all this camera equipment and everything arrives. People are arriving. We're straight onto the prep. You know, I've batch cooked all the food. I've done all the emails. You know what it's like when you've like geared up for this moment and you're like, here it is. And then someone tested positive for COVID at midday. So having built this structure, cooked all the food. I mean, Bernice hadn't even come on site yet because, you know, when I say she was just an actor, she was coming the next day. And we just had to shut it down because it was 10 days before Christmas, and it was kind of the last day that one could get COVID to then get better, to then see your family at like Christmas. Right. I mean, it's so weird, you know, like I think that was the worst part because I'm blathering on, but I find this quite funny. But there was a guy that lived above us, the flat above us, and he was a rugby player, and he left for training at 7 a.m. and like the stuff must have come at like 8 a.m. By the time he came back from training at 7 p.m, all the equipment had gone. There wasn't even a sign that the film production thing had happened, and I was just like, he sort of came back, and he was none the wiser that anything had ever taken place. Whereas I just remember sitting on the sofa being like, oh, and. But again, it was all experience because I had never had that happen to me as a filmmaker, where you have these 3 days to film something, and then it was a question of finding new dates, new times, slightly changing the crew, re-gearing up essentially for like a 6-month preparation thing. So for me, that was possibly the worst moment, although I didn't let it show at all. I think everyone was melting, and I was like, just sort of put on this persona where I was like, we're shutting down, and like and it's only when everyone left that I was like, oh god. But you know, that was for me the worst part. But I actually think because of that, we made a better film, just because several new people came on board. It was probably a better time of the year to do it, and it's weird in those moments you don't realize it, but it's meant to happen because something better is going to come. But at the time, obviously, I couldn't see any of that, so that would be the worst moment for me. But I don't know if Bernice, you had a separate one.
No, we were heartbroken on the day because it's like planning, you know, we're a very small budget. It was self-funded. It's like planning a giant wedding, and then someone has gone and I wasn't ever turning up that day because the actors were being called the next day. But I had a call from Jane, our director, at maybe around 1 p.m. or something, and my gut just knew, because I just thought, I just don't know why she'd be calling me. They're going to be heads down busy doing the lighting and everything. And she explained everything, and you know, I was obviously like so shocked on the phone. And I remember her saying to me, Bernice, it's persistence and passion that makes a film, and we've got both of those, and we're going to just do it. It's going to happen. It's just not happening now. And it was right when we did make it in March. 3 months later, managed to get all the stars aligned, and we did it, you know, because we had a crew of 13 people, 3 actors. So but the best part of the filming, I think, would just be working with the people, just working with wonderful people. And Jane, our director, just cultivated such a beautiful environment on set. She, you know, it felt really safe. It was very calm. That was also down to you, Meg's being a great producer. But there was apart from the COVID hiccup in December, I don't think there was any hiccups on set. And, you know, we had an amazing director of photography, Oscar Partridge, and just everyone was just, honestly, good eggs. And everyone was there to make the film the best it could be. And everyone was invested. And
that's great. Thank you, guys. So I guess my next question is, what is success in the indie world? I mean, none of us are going to buy a mansion from anything that we get for an indie film. We just simply pray to break even. So what would you consider success?
I think for me, because I'm such at the beginning, this is the first film I've made and written and made, and so I'm right at the beginning of my journey. I dream big, don't get me wrong, but I think right now, so my success might look different to someone else's, but mine is, I just always want to make work that I'm proud of. I hold myself to high standards, work that I'm really proud of. Yes, you can always learn, and you'll be like, oh, we could have done that better, this, but just if we tried to make it as authentic and as truthful, or whatever it, each film requires something different. This, was a film that it was a psychological thriller, and it just had to be so, it had to tap into certain things. So I think if I can just make work that I'm proud of and where I'm stretching myself and I'm growing, at the moment, that's my success. So I'm not, of course, yes, I want to get into loads of festivals and get noticed, but yeah,
it's defining your own success as well, right? So I think if you're making work that you're proud of, that you're passionate about, whether that's comedy or narrative, that's already like what an incredible thing to do, in that you're creating your own work. Like, that is empowerment in itself. And normally that also means juggling it around several other jobs, family, friends. It's not normally, also you're not allowed to do it as your own job or career. So I always think that's a success when anyone makes something sort of in and around all that life can throw at you. I also think it's like it's again stretching yourself. So every time you do a film, how do you do it a little bit different? How do you do it a bit better? I don't actually think length is necessarily a key. Like, my comedy short Surgeons was only 90 seconds, but it's like been one of my most successful short films, and on the film festival circuit, like got into some really like all sorts of film festivals. So it's not necessarily about length, but I think it's about the specificity, I never can say that word, the specificness of the script, and the every time you do a film or a creative filming project, it's increasing that like pod of people that you can go and create with, because that actually that just means that each project you do will get better and better. And that's actually why I turned to producing a little bit, because I feel quite empowered to make the stuff that I want to make, but every time I produce something, I meet more fabulous filmmakers that I'm like, I'd like to work with you again, and that excites me for whatever might come in the future.
Let's say your niece or your nephew comes to you and goes, "Hi, I want to be an indie filmmaker." What would be your statement? What would be your, how would you answer that question? What would you say to them?
I'd say do it. Absolutely. Yeah. If there's a story in you and there's something you need to tell, do it. And I would just say, just start with one piece of the puzzle. Get one person on board that and work with people that share your enthusiasm and love for this story. And then I think you can't go wrong. And the best way to eat an elephant is bite by bite. So just focus on, bring on one person, they might bring on that next person that brings on this person, and before you know it, this little village has grown that's going to help you. But if if you've got that idea, just keep charging on with it.
And I would say also, what goes around comes around. Like, you will get people who will just keep take, but if you are able to help other people out on their short films, if that's making the cup of tea or just being an extra in the background, that 9 out of 10 times someone will repay the favor just when you need it. And if they don't after several attempts, you also know then you're not really supposed to make the films with them sort of going forward. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I'm basically done. So guys, have any last statements or comments you want to make or anything?
Just that we're so excited. This will be the US premiere of I Called You, and what a place to do it. So I think one of us are hoping to come out to the film festival and see the city and all it has to bring. But we're just having been in a few in Ireland and a couple in the UK, it's just fabulous to kind of cross the water with I Called You. We're really grateful for that opportunity. So thank you. And
thanks for having us.
Yeah.